Hello, guys. Good morning. Today, I'm going to discuss Macbeth, a tragedy by William Shakespeare, who is the greatest English Elizabethan playwright. Macbeth is one of the four major tragedies. They are Othello, King Lear, Hamlet, and Macbeth itself. You know, Macbeth is the shortest tragedy of William Shakespeare. The topic of lecture today is atmosphere and a structure of Macbeth. In the ancient Greek theatre, there was an insistence upon the unities of time and place. It was a practice adopted obviously for making the dramatic art conform to a sense of realism and a strict artistic form. Aristotle enlarged the frontiers of drama by adding to them the unity of action. Shakespeare, in the exuberance and the flowering of Renaissance, rejected the unities of time and place, but subscribed to a great extent to Aristotle's unity of action. He disagreed with Aristotle on the point that tragedy represents serious action and brought in scenes for comic relief. In the French tragedies, more particularly in Racine's, there is a strict observance of the unities. Shakespeare, however, did not take the artistic form while defying the unities. Othello is a play of great structural sense, and still the scenes change. In The Winter's Tale, some parts of the drama recommence after a gap of 16 years. Shakespeare's defiance of unities is a strict fidelity to experience. He would not let his various experiences be acted if the same place and at the same time, because in that case the action is stayed and the play loses convincingness. And why should at all an artist maintain any unity whatsoever? James Joyce's Ulysses is the experience of 24 hours. Can the variety and multiplicity of Joyce's experiences be possible within the span of 74 hours? In Eliot's The Westland, we move from the favors of Baudelaire to the Italy of Dante, and from there to the world of Indian myths. Any fixed unity was an outrage to Shakespeare. He imposed an imaginative order upon the experience in an order which can be apprehended by a most sensitive response to imagination. What makes for the greatness of his dramatic art is a correspondence between the experience and the atmosphere. In King Lear, the suffering of an unaccommodated old man answers to the setting of a barren heath where he contexts hails and storms and the wintry blast of the west wind. The setting of the first scene in Macbeth is quite appropriate. The witches meet in a desert amid thunder and lightning, and there is the hint of disorders. Quote, fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and fill the air. Unquote. The atmosphere is full of horror, a strange upsetting of all natural laws. This is the mystery of evil producing that effect of turnover which is carried throughout the play. This is so powerful that even good characters like Loyal Banco are affected by it. On the night of the murder of Duncan, this atmosphere is especially emphasized. Both before and after the murder, there is shown a strange perversion of nature as well as of human nature. Dreadful portents occur, strange cries are heard as Macbeth proceeds to kill his guest. No wonder that Banquo exclaims, quote, merciful powers, restrain in me the cursed thoughts that nature gives way to in repose. That is, Banquo's prayer before he goes to sleep, and he needed all God's mercy to save him from being infected with the atmosphere of horrors with which the scene is charged. This atmosphere is also fed with the note of dramatic irony that acts as an undercurrent of the whole play. We may note in this connection the terrible effect produced by the description by Duncan of the beauty and serenity of the castle. Quote, this castle hath a pleasant seat, there nimbly and sweetly recommends itself unto our general sensage. Such ironic touches strengthen the atmosphere of horror. Again, Duncan says, quote, but signs of all nobleness, like stars, shall shine on all deserves. Macbeth shrinks from the playing horror of the murderous thoughts. In Shakespeare's imagination, darkness corresponds to evil, and by corollary, light corresponds to good. So once that reasonable ambition raises its head in Macbeth, he says, quote, stars, hide your fires, let not light see my black and deep desires. Darkness or blackness broods over this, unquote. Tragedy, murders, ghastly and cruel, are committed at the dead of night when owls shriek and nature is in revolt. Again, Lady Macbeth invokes the night, which is the most appropriate time for evil deeds. Quote, come thick night, and pale thee in the dunnest smoke of hell, that my keen knife see not the wound it makes. Further, when Macbeth tells her that Duncan, on visit to his castle, is going to leave tomorrow, Lady Macbeth says, oh, never shall sun that morrow see. In other words, in this dark, unnatural world of evil, the day, the sun, and the light have no part to play. Later in Act 2, Ross reports that darkness does the face the earth in tomb when living light should kill it. Again and again, we have the images of night, darkness, and blackness. Macbeth, in a vain bid to conceal his guilt, says, quote, "Come, silling night, a scarf of tender eye of pitiful day." Unquote. After the scene is set for murder, the dark night, which stands for evil and death, strangles the traveling lamp, and darkness does the face of the earth in turn. The underlying idea is to put out the light to create a suitable atmosphere. The atmosphere of horror is accentuated by the image of blood repeated several times in the tragedy. To begin with, on his way to murder King Duncan, Macbeth has a vision of a dagger in the air, blood dropping from it. After the murder, he is full of remorse and wonders. Good. Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? No, this my hand will rather the multitudinous seas in Carnadine, making the green one red. Unquote. The witches are black, and so are midnight hags who receive Macbeth in a cavern. The blackness of night and the barrenness of the spot chill Macbeth's heart as well as spectators with horror. It reminds us of Hardy's Heath and Eliot's A Bare, Ugly and Dreadful Wasteland. The sleepwalking scene is Shakespeare's a strange creation. Lady Macbeth in this scene moves like a ghost. The atmosphere has been fused with action. Lady Macbeth utters the words related with the murder of Duncan in the past. Good. Why then it's time to do it? Hell is murky. Fie, my lord, fie. A soldier and a fiat, unquote. And she says again, quote, "Here is the smell of blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand." Unquote. It presents a very pathetic picture of Lady Macbeth's mind. If we compare the states before Duncan's murder and present, we feel pity. This abnormal state of Lady Macbeth makes Macbeth helpless and he cries. "Throw physic to the dogs. I shall none of it." Unquote. In her sleep, Lady Macbeth's confession of the betrayal of her own guest and the terror of an outraged conscience lead even the doctor to think of a spiritual consolation rather than of drugs and pills. Macbeth, therefore, presents a greater and surer unity than the unities observed and practiced in the ancient theatre. It has indisputably the unity of atmosphere. For Shakespeare, though defying the classical mode of drama, it was not the state of order, rather is chaos. Art to him was also a kind of discipline. Like all tragedies, Macbeth proved to be an exposition of evil. Shakespeare presented the spectacle of evil in Macbeth through an atmosphere of darkness and blackness. Thank you.